all of a sudden, my husband said, tag, you're it. I no longer have an income. And all of a sudden, I was asked to work 10 hours a day to grow my business. It was terrifying. I needed to shift my identity from, oh, this is a fun thing I do, to I can support this family.
What would you say is the primary thing that people in that situation that they're being faced with, this needs to work or else?
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that they need to keep in mind right now?
I couldn't go from I can't to I can, but I could go from I can't to what if I could? The moment you say yes to your idea, the universe will conspire to make that happen for you. If we're looking to live our life being led by our intuition, we have to accept that sometimes the brain needs to catch up. I don't say yes to everything. I say yes when the calling is right. And I'm 52. I just turned 52 last week. I've never been wrong.
Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to Dolores Hirschmann, who is an entrepreneur, author, speaker, and former TEDx organizer for one of the biggest TEDx events in the Northeast. I am so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for coming, Dolores.
Ina, I am so excited for this conversation. I can't wait.
And before we start, can you please tell everybody what is it that you do right now and who you help right now?
So I help small businesses grow and scale and exit profitably. And we do that by helping them create go-to-market strategies, not just a strategy, but we actually bring in a whole SWAT team of people to do the work for them or with them.
So full agency.
Full agency, fractional CMO and fractional team.
That is amazing. So one thing that I was looking into your story, first of all, we both have lovely accents.
Yes,
I am
we do.
from Venezuela. Where are you from?
I am from Argentina and my friends call me Lola. They actually do. When I land at home in Argentina, I'm no longer Dolores. I'm Lola.
You're Lola. I want to start calling you Lola. I want to be.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to be in the inside.
Yes, see, my friends call me Lola. So you go.
I'm going to tell you something that when I was looking into your story, I fell backwards like Condorito, right? Like I was astonished at the fact that you started with digital marketing in 1996. I'm sorry. 1996 is when my family got their first email address. It's like, I didn't even know there was digital marketing back then. Can you please just take me back to what did that look like back then?
So first of all, I'm impressed because you've done your research, your deep research. Very few hosts will actually catch that. So yes, in 1996 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where I was born and raised, I graduated from school, from university. And at the time, my school required a graduating thesis. And so I'm going to make it as short as possible, but it's kind of a fun story. So I decided on a topic of a thesis. And so to fulfill my research, I decided to go to New York that summer, winter US. And I was an intern at Christie's, the auction house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was living with my uncle in New York. And I was like the cousin nanny because he had little kids. And I had a room. And in my room, I had all of this kind of, if you remember, floppy disks with access to like AOL and CompuServe and all of the things. So I discovered the internet that January 1996. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. So I went back home and I went to my advisor and I said, I'm going to do my thesis on this thing called the internet and around the concept of marketing because that was my major. And he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, I got it. So anyway, I ended up doing a lot of research. At the time, there were 30 people connected to the internet in the whole country of Argentina. There were very few around the world. And it was a very collaborative community. And so I ended up doing my case study on digital supermarkets. And the first one was in California. So anyway, I did all this work. I presented my thesis. I had two judges, a business professor who was in his 40s and an economics professor who was in his 60s, 70s. And so in Argentina, they score 1 to 10. So a 10 is like a great grade and a 1 is like super fail. So I walked out with 2 grades, 9 and 5. So the business professor scored me at 9. He was blown away. The economics professor had no clue what I just presented, like had no way to understand what I was talking about. But at the core of my work there, and this is what has defined my work to this day, the title of the top of the thesis was I'll say it in Spanish and I'll translate, was marketing en Internet, marketing de relaciones. It was marketing on the internet, relationship marketing. At the basis, my thesis back then was the internet is going to allow for someone to go to a store, let's say the butcher, and in the 1800s, you go to a butcher and say, "Hey, now how are you? Do you want another pound of meat this week? Do you have your cousin over for dinner?" Right? Because they know you. They had that relationship. It's not possible to have that type of relationship with your audience in a mass market, except that the data, now AI, allows you to collect this data and really cater an experience to your customers. So my thesis in 1996 is like, we will have the technology to have every customer come and interact with our brand and feel welcome, feel known, feel heard and seen. And that's what's happening.
You were so wrong about that, by the way. Like you basically
I didn't tackle the privacy policy issues, but I focused on the benefits.
You predicted basically like that social media was going to be a thing 10, 15 years before it actually
Yeah,
you
because
could see that
when I
potential.
wrote this, first it was the first paper on what to do with the internet. There were a lot of tech papers back then, but none on how we would impact marketing. It was the first paper written on that topic in Spanish in the world. So for years, I was getting requests to send the whole paper. And had I known what I know now, I should have published it. I should have become a speaker. There was now that I am a full marketer, it's like, oh my God, that's an opportunity I missed. Instead, I went and had babies.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about that because I always seek for what makes this person a superhuman. You have had an incredible career starting multiple businesses, doing so many creative endeavors. It's almost like you're the Energizer Bunny. It's like you have an idea and you have just gone to do it. And we're going to get into that because I want to kind of transfer some of that energy into our audience so they can do that stuff too. But not only did you do all of that, right? You were not just sitting at home coming up with this stuff. You had 4 kids under the age of 5, right? And came to the US, right, to live here for the first time. And I understand that coming to the US for the first time to live here with your then husband was not the easiest decision to make. And
so I'm going to walk you through a couple of things you don't know because they're not public information, so you couldn't have known this. So there's two moments in my life, in my young adult life. So at the age of 19, 20, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, pancreatic tumor. And the doctors in Argentina said that I would die. It was not cancer. It was a tumor. They didn't know what it was, but they needed to remove it. So I ended up going to Miami and they removed it and it was fine and it wasn't cancer and I recovered. And pancreatic surgery in itself is very dangerous.
Yeah.
And so it took me a while to recover. Anyway, that was one moment. Then the thesis and I graduated. But the day after I defended that thesis, I went to Malaysia and I lived in the jungle for 3 months. Don't ask me why. My father said, "Where are you going? Why are you going there? Like, you've already gone through like a challenge, like a physical challenge."
Yeah.
And he's like, and I had this romantic idea. It was a combination of Out of Africa, the movie?
Yeah.
Out of Africa and Foreign Legion, that I would be wearing these beautiful dresses in the jungle doing something. It was nothing like that. I cried for 2 weeks and I ended up living there for 3 months doing community work with a British organization. So anyway, when I came back from that trip to Argentina, and the only reason I came back was because my brother was getting married and I had, big Argentinian wedding, whatever. But 4 weeks after I landed back from Malaysia, which was the first time in my life that I had no school because I had just finished. I had no job because I was just in that transition. And I broke up with my then boyfriend before I went to Malaysia. So 4 weeks after coming back from Malaysia, I met an American tourist.
How did you meet?
So I'm not going to go for the long story, but short story is like he arrived to Buenos Aires and had some contacts. One of those contacts was the mother of a girlfriend of mine. And so this mother said to my friend, "Oh, this nice American, why don't you take him out with your friends and you can practice your English?" So this friend of mine on December 21st, 1996, calls me and says, "I need to take this American out for dinner. I can't go alone with him and my boyfriend. We need a fourth." And I'm like, I can't do that. I have a wedding. And she's like, can you just go late to your wedding? Can you go for dinner? Anyway, so that's how I met. It wasn't even a blind date. It was like, my husband says it was a blind date. I say it was like, take the tourist out for dinner type of date.
Right.
And I was getting dressed. And this is where we're going to go a little bit into woo-woo, because intuition is part of my secret power. So I'm getting dressed for this not date. And I'm like, why did I say yes to this? And I say yes easy. Because here I am. But
No, I mean, this podcast is very hard to get into. It's very
I said, why did I say yes? I have so many, like, I was just in the coming back from the big Malaysia trip that I was already, and so I'm getting dressed and I'm thinking, what if this is it? What if this is him? 2 weeks before that date, I had said to my mother, I don't want boyfriends anymore. I was 24. I don't have boyfriends anymore. Like, I'm done dating. I'm breaking up. Like, I'm done with that. And my mom rolls her eyes and she's like, whatever. But anyway, I'm getting dressed and I'm like, what if he is it? And so I'm like, wow, maybe. And so I get out of my house, my dad's house, get in the car, because it was my friend, her boyfriend, and this guy, my husband.
What's his name?
Alex. And he knows this, so I can say this. And I was wrong in my judgment, but I take one look at him, and by the way, he's very handsome, and I'm like, oh, what a waste of my time.
Oh.
And I was like, this was not it. It was my first judgment. His judgment, when he sees me walking out of my dad's house, he's like, I'm going to marry her.
Wow.
So we went out for dinner, and I had like no expectations. So I was me. Like, when you have nothing to lose, like, I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I was like, whatever. I just need to, go for dinner.
The guard is down.
The guard is totally like nothing to accomplish here. Like, it was like, just hang out. But he was trying to marry me. So he was like trying to impress me. And a guy trying to impress a girl never really goes right. Right. And so it was like one of those weird dates. And, but 3 months after that day, so December 21st is when we met. And March 21st, we got engaged.
Wow.
And we got married 7 months from the day we met.
So coming to what was the decision like before you got married? Like, how did you decide where you were going to live? Was it decided that I guess I'm going to the US with you?
So you know how I mentioned that I had told my mom I don't want to date anymore. So we met that day, and then we went out a couple of times, and then finally I said to him, look, let's not go out anymore, because you're going to go back to the US. I'm going to stay here. We're both going to cry. Like, I don't want to do that. And his answer was that, well, not necessarily I leave, and not necessarily you stay. So I was like, okay, then I guess let's go out to the movies. And so the decision was, I spoke English, and he didn't speak Spanish. He's 8 years older. So I was 24 at the time. He was 32. And he had a full-time job. He worked for his family business. He had a house. He actually bought a house. And so, and I spoke fluent English, and I traveled. And so it didn't make any sense for for us to start our life together in Buenos Aires. So that's how we decided. So I had all my kids here.
I understand that the first couple of years were
hard.
super rough.
Well, I moved from Buenos Aires, which is a fun, high energy city. I'm an extrovert, so I had a big group of friends. I was a dancer. I was a choreographer. I was in school. I had a life. And I moved to South Coast, Massachusetts. Beautiful place to live. But just imagine 25-year-olds to arrive in a suburban house with a picket fence and a garden. Beautiful. No friends. I would go out for lunch with my husband's grandmother, which was wonderful. But I was 25.
Yeah.
So the first 2 years were hard. I ended up walking into United Way, which is a nonprofit in New Bedford. And I was helping them out here or there. And I ended up winning a Volunteer of the Year award, because I was pretty much there every day. And I built their website, which, back in 1997, 98, I built their website. I built them a volunteer database. They were like blown away for free, because I was just trying to figure out my life. And so, yeah, I mean, here's the thing, is that saying yes is what I have as it's like it's my creative side, my adventure side. You say you want to interview people so that the audience can just take some tidbits of how can they, become superhuman. There's a combination to saying yes and having the courage to explore, and then the resilience to go through with it. Because those first 2 years were really hard, and I could have walked away. I could have. Like, we didn't have kids. We knew that we were getting married early. But I and my friends thought I was crazy. And my dad was like, "You're crazy." I never doubted us. I doubted everything else, moving to the US and living in a small town. And our agreement was we would figure it out. If this and here didn't work, and we were committed to the us, we would figure out where we would live. And so I always had that card in the background.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I want to get into this intuition thing because your career took like do you want me to tell you something that I really noticed? So many of us wait for opportunities to come to us. Wait for doors to open so we can walk through them. Wait for people to offer us a raise, offer us a promotion, offer us another job and another opportunity. When I looked at your path, I'm like, Dolores created every single opportunity. It didn't exist before, and she just went and created it. And I want to tap into a little bit of that mentality. What do you think made you different from everybody, that you're not looking for a job and just looking to rise above, rise in rank and just continuing to get promotions and raises? Like, why the entrepreneurial path, and why saying yes so much? Where did that come from?
I don't know exactly where it comes from. Maybe that's how I'm wired. But I would say I follow the fun. And what it really translates, if we want to be technical, is that I follow the ideas, projects, and opportunities where I physically feel elevated, where the energy of a high vibration. We want to go woo-woo, and intuition is like when you feel like your body reacts to it in a way that the brain says, what the heck is happening here? Like, there was no reasoning to me marrying a stranger in 7 months from meeting him. Like, all of that is like red flags. But my intuition and physically, my soul said, this is it. And so when my father said, what was going on? I said, I don't know, but this is it. Like, you can't, if we're looking to live our life being led by our intuition, we have to accept that sometimes the brain needs to catch up, and it might take a bit. And so if you say yes, I don't say yes to everything. I say yes when the calling is right. And I'm 52. I just turned 52 last week. I've never been wrong. So it's not about just saying yes. It's about tapping in and saying yes. And when you live like that, and it's, how do you know? Well, it just feels right. And so the key here is, how does it feel? And if you are, and that's, let me put it this way. It doesn't mean that sometimes you will feel like throwing up, which I did before I stepped into this microphone just now. I did. You can feel like throwing up. You can feel like your legs are shaking and feel that it's right at the same time. You just have to know. Now, you're freaking out, scared, running away. Well, then listen to that too. And you might have to run away.
I think you have a really good point, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. This is kind of how I explain it to people. When something like makes you nervous, right? I want to know if it's because you are afraid that it may or may not work, and you don't know. There's uncertainty with every time that we say yes to things, right? Is it the uncertainty? Is it that fear? Or is it that this is not the right move and it feels wrong?
So you mentioned something that you observed, which is that from where you sit and what you research on my background. By the way, I love that you actually do your research on your own. You didn't ask me anything, because that's a more real research. Like whatever you found, you made your own conclusions. And you observed that I created. And there's some truth to that. First of all, I believe that leaders create. And so when you see an opportunity, it really is I mean, fear, it will always be at play, and it's an important role, it's an ingredient, because fear is what keeps us safe. But the question is, okay, I'm afraid of this, but can I create from this? Is the question I ask myself. What can I do with this? Is this something or somewhere I want to play? Is this someone or a relationship I want to have? Can I create from this seed of opportunity? And if the answer is yes, then I go for it.
And why are we always waiting for somebody to give us permission to do it? You know how many people are listening right now who are like, I've always wanted to X, start a blog, start a podcast. That looks kind of cool. I feel like one day I will. It's like we're almost like waiting for somebody to like hand it to us in a silver platter. But you have been of the mentality that, that feels right. I'm just going to go and see what's up and just go and do it. How can people tap into that?
So yes. And all of those thinking is, can I, should I, I'm afraid. I feel all that. It's just, maybe the difference is that I don't sit on that too long. Like, it's not that I don't have that. It's right there. Like right now, my new frontier, which I'm loving it, and it scares me, is I'm in an investor, and I buy companies. And my goal is to buy small businesses. Let me give you some background. 70% of small businesses shut down when the person is tired or they pass away. They just shut down. I closed three companies, but two that were very profitable companies because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I got bored. I got, new project, whatever. I closed them down. And so I'm committed to helping small businesses transcend the time that the founder is involved in them. So I buy companies. It scares me. It's like, I'm not like a big investor. Like, I don't have that identity of myself. I'm a marketer. I'm a communications expert. I'm a really good business strategist. I can do finance, but it's not my thing. I can do the legal conversation, but I don't like it. Like, there's so many things that I'm like, I am not this. But the truth is that I am wired to do this work. I know that. And I go into these meetings with sellers with shaky knees, but I have to give myself the permission to own my worth, to know what I know, and know that the beauty of anything that we do in life is doing it with the right partners. So whatever I don't know, I say, hey, and I'm part of a community with a lot of brilliant people. So if I'm not sure of something, I can always tap into someone and say, hey, do you know about this? Like, I'm negotiating a company in software space. Like, I'm not familiar with that industry in this particular vertical, but I brought in a partner who's like, oh, I can do that all day, but I cannot do marketing. I was like, great, match made in heaven. So it's really about not sitting on the hesitation for too long. It doesn't mean that we skip it. It's there. And trusting that you know what you know. And whatever you don't know, trust that the universe will bring the right resource, the right colleague, the right partner to walk with you.
Can we give people like checklist bullet points if they want to jump into an idea that they've never done before, right? And they've been sitting in this fear for a year, right? This idea germinated in their brain a year ago and they still haven't made a move. What are like the top 3 things they need to do if they want to go and take action on this?
Step number 1, go to Amazon and buy a book called What Do I Do with an Idea? No, not my book. It's a children's book. You should have it for your boys. It's called What Do I Do with an Idea? Because first thing is sit on the idea and let it simmer. And some people do like the idea parking lot or have a document with ideas. Put it there. You'll notice that if it is the right idea for you, it's going to hunt you. It's going to keep coming up. I'm sure you, Ina, thought of having a studio style podcast for years, and you had a whole lot of reasons why not. I'm making this up, but I'm sure you said, no, I'm just having a baby. No, I'm just doing this. No, I'm busy with this. No, who will watch it? No, I mean, there's so many of those. But the idea stayed with you to the point that here we are in a fancy studio having this conversation. It hunted you down. So recognize that the idea is there. Notice if it's following you everywhere, and then make a decision. Is this idea for me, or should I let it go? So if it is for you, go take action. If you should let it go share it to somebody else. You have to take an action with that idea. Either you will go and execute on it and do whatever you need to do, and know that the moment you say yes to your idea, the universe will conspire to make that happen for you. And I know that. But if it's not yours because you decide that it's not the time or it's not the focus, then go and share it with some other human being. They may or may not take action on it, but you have to make space for the next one. I believe that ideas are divine inspiration. They're ideas that are inspired in spirit. And so that whatever idea you have, trust that there's hundreds, if not millions of people that are having the same idea at the same time. It all comes from the same source of the universe and the connectedness of the universe. And so know that there's a lot of people who are having the same idea, but only the courageous ones will take action on it.
Even when things get rough.
Exactly.
Can you please share with us what is one of those moments in your career that you feel like was one of the most challenging things that you had to go through, but that got you here?
So, first of all, everything in your life is a gift. And I'm going to get my tissue ready because it happens to be that we are having this conversation in a really pivotal moment in my life. My youngest son, we have 4, is going to college in 7 days. So I will be an empty nester. And so my biggest creation is my family. To the point that, and I was driving here, and it's just such a gift to have today and a long drive because the car is my place for thinking. Actually, my husband said, well, why don't I go with you? And I'm like, you know what? I'm good. Because I was thinking in my head the conversation I want to have with my children on Sunday. We're going to have a goodbye party for my son. But it's also a wrapping up of being the mother of children and now being the mother of adults. And so everything that has happened in my life has been a gift. And one of the biggest, most challenging gifts, not probably wrapped in the shiny paper you would expect a gift, was when my husband and his father had a breakup. And we ended up with a 5-year legal battle between my father-in-law and my husband. And it was a moment in time. My youngest was, Lucas is 18. My youngest was about 10, 11 years old. So my oldest was 16. Actually, it was 10 to 16, 10, 12, 14, 16. And all of a sudden, life as we knew it stopped. Because the reason why we moved to the U.S. and the reason why we settled where we settled was because my husband and his father were building a business together, shared ownership and all of that. And all of a sudden, and my role at the time was I was a full-time mom with a part-time business. Loved my business. I'm a coach. My background is coaching. So I was doing a mix of leadership coaching, executive coaching, and business strategy. And I was a full-time mom and a full-time entrepreneur, which my husband is a mathematician. And he's like, that doesn't compute. I was like, it computes in my world. I define full-time, which means really I was there for the kids. I would pick up carpool. After 2:00, I was with the kids. But from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., I had a nice little business. And so basically, all of a sudden, my husband said, Tag, you're it. I no longer have an income and we're going to have a fight because, things are not going well. So it was terrifying because everything I knew was true and kept me safe, all of a sudden wasn't there. I have a big thing with safety. I come from Argentina. I know you come from Venezuela. And we grew up in countries where stability is not a thing. And I grew up in a nice environment, privileged home. But, my father didn't always have a job. And it wasn't always safe. It wasn't always stable. It wasn't always like we know how we're going to provide for the family. And so safety and financial stability is a big part of my being safe as a mother of four. And all of a sudden, basically, our income was going to be my sidekick. And I was the fun money. I was the money to go for a quick trip. I was the money for like the dress that I wanted to buy. And again, I'm not complaining. I feel very privileged. But when all of that goes away, and all of a sudden I needed to, one, produce for my family financially, two, redesign my marriage, three, no longer was I doing carpool. I loved doing carpool. I loved cooking meals. And all of a sudden, I was asked to work 10 hours a day to grow my business. And I wasn't doing my full-time momming anymore. And I didn't realize what that meant until later on. So that was a long explanation, but that was one of the moments where, one, I needed to shift my identity from, oh, this is a fun thing I do, and it can't support a family, to I can support this family, and I can do it well, and I can do it with grace, and I can be a mom, and I can have fun. Because also that, I was like, the truth is, the first 6 months I got burned out. I just didn't know how to do it all. And I learned. And I started to realize, okay, what do I focus my energy? Like, how do I do this? And there's been so many gifts in the process. And I've become so much more than I ever imagined becoming because of the gift of that challenge. So that was a lot.
I just want to say, uh, I'm always thinking of like anybody who's listening right now who is going through their own version of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna cry. I've been using more tissues than you. I've been thinking of people that are really going through a really hard time right now. And it seems like it's impossible, right? Like I have this little business and now I really need to make it work. And you've been through that. What would you say is the primary thing that people in that situation that they're being faced with, this needs to work or else? What are some things that they need to keep in mind right now?
So there was a specific transition. It was December 9, 2016. We knew that my husband's paycheck was going to end December 31st. And I spent the whole month crying. I would wake up crying. I would go to bed crying. I would run into people on the street and I would cry. And I was full on victim temper tantrum. Like it's like, oh, it's happening to us and blah, blah, the whole thing. I can't. So the truth is that January, we were on our own, right? And I woke up in January and I, the whole conversation of I can't was really clear. That's all I would say. Like, I can't. And then one morning in January, that first week, I said, and I'm very literal. Like when I know what I need to do, I needed to generate X amount of dollars so that we wouldn't remortgage. Like the list was long. It was how much money do I need to stay in this house, to keep the cars, to keep the kids where they are in school, blah, 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 right? It's like, okay, this is the number. Okay. It was like, wow. But I woke up in January and, the I can't conversation was very present. So all I had to do, and this is what I would suggest you guys try, is I couldn't go from I can't to I can. I don't believe in that type of positive psychology because it just doesn't, it feels a lie inside of my head. But I could go from I can't to what if I could? Because I knew I'm a visionary. So I knew very clearly what our life could look like if I couldn't, if none of us tried. And I always say, I had this extreme vision of we were living under a bridge, literally living under a bridge, homeless, which my best friend from Buenos Aires said, you would be the most fanciest homeless person living in Recoleta, Buenos Aires, which is a beautiful place where my mom lives. So she would have taken us obviously there's so many. I went to the Cinderella, like worst case scenario vision, but I knew what that looked like. But I couldn't imagine what would life look like if I could. So all I had to ask myself is, plant the seed of what is possible for us and for me and for my work if I could. What could I create? What does life look like? What is there? That's all I did. And that day, or that week that I started that way of thinking, and I had so many angels. My first angels were my clients, because my clients knew what I was going through. And we would have the session for them, and they would say, "How are you doing? What are you doing?" Like, I had a client of mine, her name is Ebony. I will always remember her. She was studying hypnotherapy at the time, and she just created this meditations for me to listen to imagine, what if I could. And then I would wake up in the morning and I would look at the mirror and I would say to myself, I support the people that support my family. Basically, my clients, which I support, they're, they're, what they pay to me is what supports my family. But it was very, very clear. I support the people that support my family. And I would say that to myself every morning in the mirror. And I would walk into my coaching clients, and I knew I had value for them, but also I knew that they were value for me. And it was just such a clear exchange of positive energy. So they were my clients were like my rock stars, and some of them I still have. Um, and the ones I don't is because they're doing great things and they don't need me, and I'm still friends with. Um, but in that day, I also came up with, I went into my brilliance. And I said, okay, if I were my own client, what do I need to do to scale? Because ultimately, I needed to produce more money. And working 50 hours a day was not possible, because it's not 50 hours in a day. So I needed to actually put my business strategies head and said, how do I turn this from a practice into a business? Like, I was a one-on-one practice, no team, nothing. And so how do I turn this into a scalable practice? And I created a methodology called the idea method, which is what I explain in that book, Clarity First. And that methodology is still what we use today. And today we are a team of 10. I have, fractional CMO clients, $1 million businesses, who don't want more than an hour or two of my time, because I'm the idea person. You don't want a lot of ideas. You want the right ideas, and then you want to go do them. And then my team comes and executes with them or for them. But I didn't know how any of that would work. I just knew that I had to do something.
Yeah. Tell me more about Masters of Clarity. First of all, I thank you so much for sharing that with us, because it really sounds like through the challenges, you had to like look at yourself very seriously and say, what is my zone of genius?
Mhm.
Like, the whatever I'm trying to create here can't be a commodity. It's gotta be something that only you can create, and that it can be world class,
Mhm.
and start putting it out there. So tell me more about Masters in Clarity.
So Masters in Clarity, first of all, I'll give credit to Jessica, Jessica Campos. She and I were sharing a room at a mastermind. I was following Fabienne Fredrickson at the time, Bold Heart. And she and I were sharing a room, and I was trying to come up with a name for my company. And I've always been called the Queen of Clarity, like, for years. And if you're listening to this, I would say, go do this exercise, because I did that at the time. And what I did is I went to my friends, my mom, my siblings, and I said, what is one thing you can count on from me? And what is the thing you come to me always that I will deliver? And all of them said clarity. Like, or things like, you will help me think things through. You will figure out a way. You will have a solution, or whatever. And so clarity was my word. I knew that. And so we were sleeping. I woke up and she looked at me, like, literally, I opened my eyes. She looked at me and she said, Masters in Clarity. And I'm like, what? That's the name of your company. Like, that's what and so that's where that come from. And it's not that I am the master of clarity. I am the master of my clarity, but I turn my clients into masters of their clarity. And I do so through I call it thinking frameworks, ways to go about whatever's in front of them, so that they can think their way through any challenge. And so So that's where it was born. And what we do is we help business owners grow. And how do companies grow? Well, yeah, there's a lot of things you need, but ultimately you need clients, you need business, you need cash in the door. And so we help them grow by identifying the right business model. We help them grow by creating a trust funnel. I don't talk about sales funnels or marketing funnels. I talk about trust funnel. This is going back to 1996 and the concept of marketing as an exchange of information to build a relationship. Whether you use the internet or not, it doesn't matter. But we help our clients create their trust funnel, meaning how do they go out into the world, meet strangers, and create opportunities for that stranger to trust them. First, that stranger turns into a lead by investing their time. That's an investment. Like that's the first paycheck. It just doesn't look like dollars or cash. It looks like trust, time, and building a customer journey or a customer, yeah, I call it like the little path for a stranger to like you, to trust you, and to eventually give you probably the biggest way of payment that anybody can give. When someone says, I have this problem and I want you to help me solve it, they're trusting you with their problem. I mean, think of it as let's say an oncologist, right? Cancer. If you choose a doctor, you're trusting them with your life. That doctor better show up. When I have a client that is trusting me with their growth, I better show up because their life, their families might be in the line. And in most cases, it is. And so we need to create an experience for our strangers, the market, to come into our world and trust us every step of the way. And that shows up in the details. That shows up in the language that you use. That shows up in the cadence that you communicate. That shows up in the pictures that you like. Every single way of you showing up either adds to the trust piggy bank or takes away.
Is it fair to say that people need to go and get your Clarity First book?
Yeah, it's free. You can go to Amazon and buy it for $3 or something, or you can go to mastersinclarity.com. There's a free button. Download it.
There's a free button. We're going to put that link below because I want people to get this full thing. And I have to tell you, one of the most impressive things that I've seen is TEDx talks, right?
Okay.
I'm going to share with you that I co-wrote a TEDx talk for one of my clients, and now it has hit more than 20,000 views on the TEDx page. We're very excited about it, but one thing that we noticed is that, we spent serious time and effort into making this as clear and relatable as possible. And when we went to see all of the other talks, we're like, we don't feel like everybody put as much thought into clarity as we did. And we were stunned by it. We're like, what were we doing? We were killing ourselves trying to make this as clear as possible. It seemed like it was such a difficult thing for people to do, to be as clear and concise with their message as they possibly can.
Under 18 minutes.
Under 18 minutes. For us, they gave us 12. So I would love to know, because I can't let you go without you telling us. There's so many people listening who are like, we would love to be super clear and succinct and make it into TEDx. And you have organized one of the biggest TEDx events in the Northeast. I want you to just come here and tell us straight, what is your biggest advice for people who want to get on that stage?
So I did run one of the largest TEDx in the East Coast with 1,200 people in the audience. And since then, I did it 2015, 2016, 2017. And since then, I've been coaching speakers. That's another thing that we do. And placing them on TEDx stages around the world. So first is go to mastersinclarity.com and download 18 Minutes of Impact. There's an actual framework. So I've created a framework. I'm going to run through it quickly right now on how to write that talk, whether it's a TEDx or a talk for anything else, in a way that it hits all the points and it doesn't confuse your audience. So here's a couple of things. First of all, stories are not talks. Stories are tools you use to communicate an idea. A good talk, TEDx or TED or anyway, a good talk is a good idea. Think of the idea as the gift you want to go have the audiences walk away with. And that gift has to be as clear, as succinct as possible. So no, more is not more. If you have an hour, don't put more stuff into it. Reinforce the one idea. So first step is have that core idea, the one idea. And so I like to work with my clients, and there's a framework I use to create that main idea. And then once we have that sentence, which is a 6-word sentence, we use that sentence to validate every line of copy or script that you write. So first is the script is 2 actions so that outcome. So what is it that you're trying to do? For example, I'm going to make it up. With this podcast of Superhuman is to interview superhuman people so that they can share their experience and help my audiences become superhuman. That's the basis of this podcast, right? So now that you do that, then you actually write the talk and you make sure that everything you include in that talk is aligned with the idea. So there's 7 steps to writing a great talk. Do you want to hear that?
Please.
Step number 1, make them care, engage with your audience. Share something that will make the audience want to pay attention. Step number 2, present your idea. Talk about what you're going to talk about. So in step number 2 is when you say, I believe that we can all be superhumans and that by listening to other people's stories, you can become your superhuman. That would be the way you present. But you don't say anything more, just that. Step number 3, introduce yourself. So many of my clients say, well, I don't want to talk about myself. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you had heart problems and you go to the doctor says, I have an idea for you. I'm going to do open heart surgery. Wouldn't you want to know if they've done it before? If they've graduated from college? If they have experience and what is their survival rate? You must talk about yourself, but only in step number 3, because if you make them care and you give a compelling, you communicate the idea you want to share, now you need to tell them that they can trust you, that you have an authority in this, that you have credibility, that you've done it before, that there's a reason why you are the right messenger. It's all about building the trust. So if you do those 3 steps right, you have prepared your audience's brain to receive your message. Then comes step number 4, which is usually what most speakers just go straight to step number 4. Then you teach or you bring your message. I call that the meat and potatoes. This is when you bring data and you bring the teaching and whatever, the case studies or you bring a lot of story there. Step number 5, you bring them back to the main idea. Remember, we're talking about getting you to become a superhuman. Step number 6, you invite them to dream. I would say something like, what is possible in your life if you believe you could? And step number 7, you call them to action. And so I would say, make a list of what would possible or go out, download my book, whatever it is. But those 7 steps, which are outlined in the book, if you follow that framework, you cannot go wrong.
Thank you so much for all of this and for really sharing parts of your story that you've never talked about before. I can't believe everything I heard. And I did my research and you blew me away. So thank you so much. I just have 2 more questions. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have of you as a successful businesswoman?
I don't spend a lot of time thinking of what people think about me, honestly. So I would say that, so I think, and this is true for anybody that you see out there, is that, oh, she can do it, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
She had this or that or that. People don't do the research. So they just assume that it was easy for you and that you had it given to you, or that, because of this or that, it worked for you and they won't work for them. So I would say whatever you see is just the result of a lot of work. And I'm incredibly proud of the work that I've done. And I think that for me, the number one overcoming was to realize, and this is so cheesy, can't believe I'm going to say this, that everything has happened for me. It is cheesy, but it's true.
And finally, if everybody who's listening, I'm here thinking of that person who really wants to make something happen and they just need to get their courage ready to go and do that thing. What do you think is the number one thing they need to do in the next 24 hours to make that life happen?
I would say first, grab a piece of paper and imagine yourself in 12 months and that everything you want in your life has come true. Write it down in present tense, like a journal entry. Like, I am so happy and grateful that I'm sitting here at my desk with this and that and that and that has happened. Like, make it real today. And then step number 2 is, if not you, then who? If not now, then when?
Love that. I love that. It's like the whole mantra that I live my life by. Thank you so much, Dolores. Can you please tell everybody where to follow you, where to find you, and what step they can take with you?
So mastersinclarity.com. I know you're going to put a lot of the links below. There's so many ways. Download the books, hop on a clarity call with my team or myself. Send me a DM. I always answer. Just come close.
Love that. Thank you so much, Dolores. You are amazing.
Thank you, Ina, for having me.
Thanks, everybody, for coming to the podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can hear more amazing stories from these superhumans that we love. I'll see you on the next one.